Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new, my name is Matthew Bellavia, and I'm a high school international baccalaureate computer science student. Welcome to my YouTube channel, and here we make Java tutorials and other coding videos that I try to make as simple, as easy to follow, and as informative as possible without being super boring or super difficult to follow or hard to read, things like that. And today we're making a game in Java. If you have not seen the previous video, I totally recommend you do that. In the previous video, we made a platformer game that looks something like this. It has motion with the keyboard and has perfect collisions and graphics working perfectly and things like that. So definitely click the link in the description down below, or maybe I'll put a card or something like that. There's a link in the description to the playlist as well for the full tutorial playlist. Definitely check that out. I highly recommend you look at that tutorial first. No, that looks weird. No, the collision's good. Definitely check that out because I'm going to be using the exact same code for this tutorial. Also in this video, I don't know what we'll be making yet. I'm not sure how far we're going to get, but I'll tell you right now because I like saying that before we get into a new video. So there you go. Okay guys, so here's the code we'll have by the end of the tutorial. We'll have full movement with randomly generated terrain. You can see the colors designate that. We can move our character across the screen here. We can use a button to restart the game, and we can also respawn if we fall off the map, just like this. So this is what we're going to have by the end of the tutorial. Okay, so anyways, getting into the code, I believe the first thing that I want to do is we're going to get rid of some of these walls so we can fall off the edge. We're going to add a respawn system. We're going to add a restart button, and then we're going to add randomly generating terrain so we can actually move across our map here. Because right now we're actually only moving in one local scene using X and Y. We want to actually move the entire frame so we can have more than like 14 blocks to play with here, and I'll show you guys how we do that. So the first thing we're going to do is, well, before we add respawning, I think we should add the moving terrain first. And this really, it seems like it's super difficult. It's really not. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a reset method within our game panel here. And this is, again, this is our panel where we control the entire game. It's the panel stored within the J-frame. And within the frame, we don't really do much besides make the panel and add the key listener. So we're going to create a new method right underneath make walls. I think we'll put it, yeah, we'll put it above it. We'll put it right here. It's going to be public void reset. So this is going to be called every time we die when we need to reset everything in our game and make sure everything's in the correct position and things like that. So we're going to do player.x equals 200, player.y equals 150. I guess I said this in the last tutorial, but I've already made all this code and I'm looking at it on the screen right here. I might not do the exact same thing for this one because my other one's like a lot farther ahead right now. But I'm kind of referencing that, so that's why I keep looking over, and hopefully won't have too many errors because of that. It's not like I'm just getting this from my head. Player.x speed equals 0, player.y speed equals 0, and we want to reset all these variables because if we don't, when our player dies and we move them back, like, he's already gonna have a ton of speed because he's gonna be off the screen, so then you can just like fall super fast. It's gonna cause a lot of issues. So I want to make sure we reset all of our variables here. We're gonna make a new variable in a moment that's gonna control the camera. I think everything else is good. We have our array list of walls, or do we? Oh, we don't even have an array list of walls yet. Oh, geez. No, we do right here. Okay, good. I thought so. So we're gonna do walls.clear. What that's gonna do is it's gonna take all of our old walls and it's gonna clear out all of them, so that way we're not constantly creating more on top of each other. And we'll get into that later. That gets really important as we move on, as we don't want to like keep storing every single object and slow down our program by a lot. So then we're gonna have to make the walls again. So we're gonna call make walls, and we're actually gonna pass an offset, and I'll explain how this works a little bit later. But offset is gonna be equal to 50 right there, and I think we can actually just create the integer here. We don't need that to be a global a variable made up in the class or anything like that. And we're gonna call make walls, and we're gonna give that into offset right there so we can take in that input. Make walls was the method we created last time to generate all of the walls within our program. Right here, we're gonna have errors because we haven't. Yeah. Well, what is error? Make walls right there. Oh, because I didn't pass through. Yeah. Yeah. So make walls creates all of the walls right here. So ideally what we're gonna get to is where every time we call make walls, it will pick a random number and it'll pick like 1 to 10, 1 to 20, all these different terrain options. I kind of have been mapping them out here of different terrains we can have, and I haven't implemented all of them even into my other program yet, kind of my test one, but these will be all the different options for what can be the next terrain we'll see, and then we can keep moving forward and it'll be randomly generated, so we don't have to actually hard code the terrain every single time we play our game. And they'll be in groups of 14 is what we have here, and that's just what fits on screen right here. And it works quite well, so I'll definitely show you guys how to do that in this video. But let's stop this for now. I remember our close window was not working. Yeah, I don't know why it's not stopping the program, and honestly I didn't get a chance to look into that yet, so make sure you're hitting the little red square right there. We will figure that out eventually, because this is kind of important once you export your game, but right now not super important. Okay, so our reset method is just about done. Everything seems good. So what we're actually going to do now is when we create our game, instead of calling make walls, we're going to call our reset method right here. And let's make sure we don't have anything else in here. Yeah, so this time, every time we die, this means every time we die, we can just call the reset method and it should fix everything. So it's really not a lot of code at all. We can go in our player object right here. And remember when we create our player object in the constructor, we're passing through the panel right here. So we already have access to the panel. So all we need to do is within our set method that's going to run every frame of the game, I think we're going to put this towards the end of the set method. Once all the movement's been done, at the very end, we're going to say if, I should probably start commenting. I didn't last time. I should have gone through and commented this, but this is going to be death code, which sounds kind of weird. But if this is our character dying, so we're going to say if y is greater than 800. Remember our frame is 700 pixels high and our character is 50, I want to say. Our character is, it'll be within the draw method. Width and height. Character is 50 by 100, yeah. So why don't we say 800, the position goes by the top left, but we don't want it to end like right when they fall off screen, we can give it a little bit of time. So we'll say 800 right here. If y is greater than 800, then all we have to do is say panel.reset. And honestly, that should fix it. Now, we can't actually fall out of the map right here because the walls are in the way, so let me move those walls really fast. We're going to go and make walls right here, and I'm just going to comment out those last two. Control backslash does that, if you guys didn't know that. Oh, one more. If you highlight the code here, control backslash, and it'll comment right there. Let's see what happens. If we fall out of our map, yeah, so it seems to respawn us just fine. Notice how we still hang there. If we got rid of that like y speed equals 0, we would have a lot more issues because like the speed would pick up, well, not huge issues, but the speed would pick up really fast and it would just look kind of weird. Right here, if we see how we're spawning with a lot of speed already, it just doesn't, as opposed to when we first run our game, we don't have as much speed. It doesn't look as good in my opinion. So not the most important thing, but that's why we reset all of our variables there, just like that. So our reset method is in place. That was pretty simple. I do want to add some buttons later, but I'm not sure that's the most important thing, so let's not do that right now. I really want to work with our motion. So what we're going to do within our panel here is we need one variable that's going to control the entire game, the entire game's location. So right now when we run our game, if we move, our character moves back and forth, but our actual game stays in place. And what we're going to do instead is we're going to fix our character in place, and our game is going to be the one moving. To give us that motion so we can go off screen, and I'll show you guys what that looks like in just a moment, but it's really quite simple. All we need is we're going to create a new variable within the panel right up here, doesn't really matter where, just somewhere above the constructor. We're going to say int camera x right there, and then we're going to set, let's see what we do with camera x here. When we first run our game, okay, so within the reset method, we're going to want to set camera x to the same thing every time. The number I'm going to go with is 150. Right there. Camera x equals 150. And that's just the right offset so things aren't too off screen. I'll show you that in just a moment. But all we need to do is within our player, when we move our player, x plus equals to x speed is what we have right now. So when we're actually moving, the x position of the player moves back and forth, but instead of doing that, we're going to say panel.camerax plus equal to x speed, just like that. So now if we run our game, our player's not going to move. I'm hitting A and D, our player's not moving anywhere, right? But instead, we're going to go within our panel. And when we run the game, we're already setting our player every time we run. We're also going to do a for each loop for all of our walls. So we're going to do for walls. So for each loop again, that'll just, it declares the individual instance that we're going to be checking within the entire collection, something like that. If you don't understand how they work, don't worry about it too much. It's the same as doing a for int I equals 0, I is less than walls.size, I plus plus, like that. Walls.get I, but this is just a little bit shorter, a little more shorthand. So we're gonna say for walls. We're gonna say wall.set, and then within the set method, we're actually gonna pass camera X, because remember when we create our player, we're passing the panel into the player, but we did not do that in each of the walls, and it's really not worth it to do that. We don't have to. So all we need to do is, instead of doing like panel.camera X and passing the panel into the walls, we're just gonna create our set method here. Public void set. Give me just a moment here. There we go. Again, I could probably figure this out just from my head, but I want to make sure I'm kind of staying close to my other code so that way it doesn't get too off and like different. Then we run into errors later when I think something's the same way and it's not. So within our set method, we're going to take in camera X, into camera X right there, and then we're going to set X is equal to start X plus camera X. And we need to have start X as the original position for the wall, because otherwise, if we just say X plus equal to camera X, it's not, it gets messed up. So when we actually create our wall up here, actually, I'm not sure we would, yeah, we do need that, okay. I'll explain that in just a moment. So we're gonna say in start X here, and this is just it's gonna save like kind of the position of the wall relative to the other walls. If we don't do this, if we just say X plus equal to start X, or X plus equal to camera X, it gets off track, it gets weird. Because we're not really changing like the X position of the walls, we're just changing them in relative to the camera. So we're gonna say this dot, actually we don't even need this dot, we can just say start X is equal to X. This is only gonna run in the constructor when we create the wall. This doesn't run every frame, so it's gonna set the original start X to the X position that we pass through when we create it. And then we're gonna say X is equal to start X plus camera X. And then finally we need to update our hitbox for our wall. Remember, we have hitboxes that are stored within all the walls for our collisions. So we're gonna say hitbox.x is equal to X. Just like that. And then we are gonna return X as well. Just right there. So we need to make this not a void method. There. And we'll use that a little bit later. Don't worry about that too much right now for the return. But anyways, there we go. So we're gonna say walls.setCameraX, and we can just leave this here. It might give us like a weird thing saying like, are you sure you don't want to do anything with the return? No, it's not even gonna give it to us. But don't worry about that. So now we're gonna run our code. And if we move to the side, you can see that our walls are actually moving, but our player stays in place. Only for the X values, not for the Y values. The Y values I decided to keep the same, but also our collisions are broken. So there's a little bit of changes we need to make to our collisions, but really fast, I'm actually hitting the D key right now and moving to the left and A to the right. Because it's running in the background, it's inverted. So instead of saying plus equal to, we're actually going to go on our wall and we're going to say minus equal to camera X. Just right there. That way, I like keeping camera X on the same axis, so that way a positive camera X is still like moving forward. Just like this. Actually, scratch that. We're gonna make that plus. Only because I don't want to mess with our collision methods too much. We're gonna keep that on plus. So we're gonna say plus there, but within our player, we're gonna say panel.camera X minus equal to X speed, just like that. And that works the same. Now I'm hitting D and we're going to the right, A going to the left. But our collisions are probably not going to work as well. They're actually working now. But one thing that's a problem with our collisions is it's hard to tell, but it's actually moving the X position of our player. And how can I show you guys this? Every time we run our player, I'm going to draw a little box. Actually, I'm just going to print out the X position to console, and you guys won't be able to see that. Within the draw method of our player, we're going to put a drawstring. We'll do gtd.drawstring. And it's, the string we draw is going to be integer.toString and x. So let me draw the x position of our player really quick, just so you guys can see this. Hopefully this even works. Let's see. Yeah, so that's way too small, for real. I create a new font super fast. Don't worry about copying this code down because we're gonna get rid of this. This is just for demonstration purposes. Font.bold 40. GTD.set font F. Let's see how that works. There we go. So there's the x position of our player. You can see it's 200 right now, but when we get in a collision, it's gonna change our x position because of the code we have. Remember, it checks to see if there's a collision, and then it will move us as close to the wall as we can without like colliding into it. But our x position is actually moving. It's not by enough that you can tell, but this isn't what we want. We want our player to be fixed. Later, I might implement where we can move back and forth a little bit. Like we start here, we can move to here, and then the camera moves. We can move back this way until here, but then the camera moves, so that way we can't get too close to the edge of the screen, and that's how most platforming games work. But right now, we want to just stay fixed with our player. You can see our x position is changing, so that's not what we want. So we need to fix our collisions here to actually look at camera x instead of x itself. So let me pull up my collisions real quick, because this is one that I definitely will. It needs to take some time and actually read through it to figure it out. So I'm just going to go by what I already pre-prepared. So we have hitbox.x right here, plus equal to x speed. That's not going to change. Except through the walls, that stays the same. This all stays the same. This stays the same. There's really not a ton of changes here. I believe all we're going to want to do is after this line, so hitbox.x minus equal to math.signum x speed. So this next line we have x speed equals 0. That's fine. But instead of having x is equal to hitbox.x, we want panel.camerax right there is plus equal to x minus hitbox x. So what this does is, remember, we're moving our hitbox away from the player until it's in the right position, and then what we were doing before is we were then taking our player and moving our player up to the hitbox. But instead of doing that, we want to take the difference between the player and the hitbox, and we know, okay, we need to move 4, and we're going to move the camera by 4 instead, and we're not going to move the player at all. So that's what this line will do right here. X speed equals 0, and then finally hitbox.x is equal to x, which our x positions should not be changing, so actually that line of code probably is not even necessary. But let's keep it there just in case. We want to make sure our hitbox always stays on the x position of our player. Let's keep it just in case. And then with vertical collisions, I believe we're going to make the same change. Hitbox.y plus equal to y speed, and everything else looks to be the same. Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to say right there, y speed. Actually, never mind. This is totally the same because we're not moving our camera up and down. We're only moving our camera side by side. The camera up and down, I don't plan on making this game like super high up, so we're still jumping with our player. We're not moving the camera side by side, so we don't need to change that at all. If we did in the future, it would be the same change though. But I want to keep the player able to jump up and down on the screen. That's how most games work. It depends. It depends how you want to make the game and how tall you want to make things and things like that. But I think this is fine right now. And now you can see our collisions are totally fine. I should have kept our exposition code, but if you look at it closely, the exposition is not changing. It's staying right on the corner of my mouse right there. Oh, no, right there. And it's not changing. It's staying in the same position. So that'll fix that. And now our game works relatively well. We can move across the screen. If we fall off, we can spawn back up. But I don't like the way we're generating our terrain right now because it should be generated back to the end here. We're on the very edge, and that's just part of the offset that we have. I haven't implemented the offset yet, as well as the generation isn't working super well. So we're going to add some auto-generating terrain because as we keep moving, I want to keep creating terrain here. So I'll show you guys how we do that. This is all going to be within our panel for the most part. I believe it's all within the panel, actually. So let's get back to our panel, and let's go to the make walls method. We're going to add a ton of stuff to this. Before we do anything else, I do want to declare a variable, just int s equals 50, because 50 is the size of our walls. They're 50 by 50. That just saves a little bit of time rather than typing 50-50 for all of them. SS is a little bit easier. S would stand for size, I guess. We're also going to do a random. So random, rand equals new random. create a random object right here, or object variable, whatever you want to call it. Random right there, and then we're gonna say int index is equal to rand.next int, just like that. And I'm gonna put in 1 for now. So what this will do, this will return a random integer. Remember, integers are only whole numbers, so 1, 2, 3, 4, not 1.2, not 4.6, only whole numbers. This will return a whole number between 0 and this number, not counting this number though. So if this is a 5, then we're only gonna get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. If this is a 1, the only option we're going to get is 0, which is what we want right now, because we only have one train thing set up so far, but we're going to add a bunch of them in the future. So actually, I'm going to totally get rid of the one we had before. We're just going to backspace all of that. Hopefully that didn't take too much time last tutorial to copy all of that down, but that was creating our train. What we're going to say, though, is if index is equal to 0, we're going to do a bunch of stuff. And then eventually we can add else if it's equal to 1, else if it's equal to 2, else if it's equal to 3, and then we can make this as high as we want. And each one of those will actually be a different option for our randomly generated train here. This was, again, me just using a photo editor to kind of plan out how I want to do that. So right now we're just going to set 1. We're going to say if index is equal to 0, then we're going to make a bunch of train. And I think the first one that I'm going to do is just a flat line. So we're literally just going to make like a flat line across right here of 14 blank walls right there. And I actually don't have this one on the screen, so I'm going to have to do this one from my head. So we're going to say for int I equals 0, I is less than 14, I plus plus. This is just going to run the loop 14 times. We actually don't even need brackets, I don't believe. I should be able to do this all in one line. We're going to say walls.add. Remember, walls is our array list of walls. Walls that add a new wall, and within that wall we're gonna pass everything the wall takes in, so x, y, width, and height. So our x position is going to be offset. Offset is just gonna make sure that, again, remember when we ran our game, I can't show you right now because I can't run it, but we were starting right on the edge. We want to move it back to the edge of the screen, so offset will fix that. So we're gonna say offset. And then we're gonna say plus. We'll start at, actually I guess just 0, so we're just gonna say offset, and then we're gonna say plus I times 50. So what this will do is, again, this code's running 14 times. Every time it runs, we want to print a new wall. So every time it runs, it's gonna print a new wall, and we're gonna space them out by 50 because they're 50 wide. And again, we don't want any gaps in this one right here. So we're gonna say offset plus I times 50. And then for the Y position, I'm going to say 600 because it's right below the bottom of the screen. That's what we've been using before. And then SS for width and height because, again, I don't want to have to type in 50, 50. And in theory, we wouldn't even have to pass in the width and height. We can just set them in here. But in the future, we might want to make different sized walls. So that's why I'm going to keep that support open in case we decide to use that in the future. And again, I could just type 50, 50. But, you know, S is a tiny bit faster. So let's run this and see what happens. We have issues with carrots here. I did get rid of a carrot. I wasn't supposed to. Thought I did. Okay, there we go. Let's run this again. Here we go. So we're spawning. We're still on the edge here. So clearly our offset is not working correctly. But we have 14 walls, and they seem to work perfectly there. Perfect. So actually, I think, why are we using offset? Give me just a second to look at this. You know, I'm not sure we need to even use the offset here, because offset is fixed every time we run make walls. It's not. Oh wait, no, I remember why. Okay, so we do need to keep offset. There's a reason why. I'll show you guys in a moment. We do need to keep offset, but I think for our initial offset, we're actually gonna set it to -100. Let's see if we can do that. And this should fix the position. Yeah, so there we go. So I like that position better. We're gonna set the offset to -100, and we do need offset. Not even for why. I'll show you guys in just a moment. But we're going to set that to -100, or should we go -150 so we start right on the edge? Let's do -150. This way our whole screen is covered with walls right when we start. There we go. You can see the wall goes right to the edge there. Our player is not centered on the... No, it is. Yeah, okay. That was going to drive me insane. But anyways, so yeah. So our walls will start on the edge, and we can move back and forth. Everything works perfectly here. If we fall off the edge, we respawn. Just like that. So that all looks good. But the problem is we're not generating new terrain. So what we're going to do is, let me actually find where this even goes. I put this somewhere. What we want to do essentially is when the farthest wall on the edge, I'm doing this again from your guys' perspective, it's flipped for me, but our character starts here. I'm doing this backwards. It starts here and it moves along. Once the farthest wall over here gets on screen, we want to generate new ones so there's no gap. Even before it gets on screen, once it gets close to being on screen, we want to generate a new one. We don't want to just generate like 100 at once though, because it's just gonna slow down the code, and we don't want to do that. We only want so many in place at one time. So let me actually find my code super fast here. I believe I kept it in the panel. Let's see where we kept this. Was it in the run method? Yeah, it was. Okay. So I put this at the very beginning of our run method, before anything else happens. Right here. I'm stepping through each of the walls, and then I'm seeing if we need to respawn new ones, and then I'm going to spawn them. So I'm going to say if walls.get walls.size, walls.size -1. I'll explain that in just a moment. Then we're going to say, we don't need 2 brackets, we only need 1. .x is less than 800. Then we're going to do some stuff. So what this is saying is walls.get walls.size -1 is going to give you the final wall. Remember, the walls are spawned in order for the most part. Yeah, they should be spawned in order from left to right. Then we keep that straightforward, standard when we make all of our terrain generation. If the farthest wall is at 800, location 800, then it's close enough that it's about to be on screen. Because remember, our screen is 700 pixels wide. I need some water. Give me just a moment. Okay, our screen is 700 pixels wide. So if it's within 100 pixels, if it's almost on screen, we need to generate a new one. So that's what this is going to check right here. And again, we need to do the -1 because remember, if we have an array list from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's going to return 5 as the size because size does not include 0, but the positions do. So then if you call just walls.get walls.size, it's going to give you a error for index out of index exception, something like that. You guys know what I'm saying. So within our if loop here, if this occurs, we need to start new walls. So we can do make walls again. We can pass in offset. So I guess we are actually going to want offset to be a variable up here. So we need to declare offset in our class above the constructor into offset right up there. And then we're going to say down here we declared it again. So let's not do that. Offset is equal to -150. And actually, I'm going to do the... No, that's fine right there, because the reset is called from our constructor. So that works perfectly. Okay. So offset equals 150, and then we're going to make new walls with offset. But if we do this, nothing's going to change, because it's going to generate new walls. Right now, it's generating a ton of walls. It's probably generating like hundreds of them right now, but it's going to print them on top of each other. Actually, I'll even show you guys. Let's see. But it should be generating tons of walls right now. Let's print out walls.size. So right now we have, oh yeah, already we have thousands of walls, 2,000. Yeah, so that's that. It stopped at 2,500. I think that's the max it'll do. Oh no, we just stopped scrolling. Oh geez. Yeah, we have 11,000 walls right now. So clearly that's a problem. Okay, so let's stop printing that out. So what we need to do is we need to actually move the offset, and this is why we use offset. So we're going to say offset plus equal to 700, because remember that's the size of our whole frame, and we're doing 14 walls, 50 pixels each, so 700 pixels for one terrain generation. I'll keep the print line actually. Walls.size. I'm going to keep that so we can keep printing how many walls are occurring in one place. So right now there's only 14 walls. As soon as we move one this way, it's going to generate more. Yeah, there we go. Now we have 28. Now we have 42. Now we have 56. So they're going to keep generating, and our train is going to keep coming out of nowhere. So you can see right there, our train's going to keep going forever. But a problem here is that now we have all these walls off screen, and that's going to start sucking up our CPU space. So even now, we should be able to see it a bit. Let's see. If you look at our program right here, right now it's using 36 megabytes of memory. If we keep running, you can see it's going up. It's already at 42 now, and this could just be there's running more time as well. Now it's down to 38, and who knows? It's so low end It's not gonna make a huge difference. I have a pretty fast PC as well. But you know, once we have a bunch of graphics on there, we have a ton of objects like moving within our walls, like enemies or you know coins to pick up, whatever, things like that. It's gonna cause a lot of issues. Now we have 300 walls, so clearly that's not good practice when you're making games. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna say within, I believe within our walls.set method. Let's see where we want to store this. We're going to store this within the run method. We are keeping everything in the panel, but we're going to do this after everything else, I think, but before repaint. Repaint is the very last thing we want to do. We want to paint after we've updated the location of everything. So repaint should always be at the end of your run method, but before that, we're going to have a for loop that steps through all the walls. And this is one time where you actually can't use a for each loop. If you try and do a for each loop like this, it's going to give you an error, and I'll explain that in a second. I actually didn't even know why. I was asking a friend, I'm like, hey, am I doing something wrong here? I was showing them my code yesterday, and they were like, oh, it's because you're using a for each loop, and I didn't even realize that. So we're going to want to do a for into I equals 0. I is less than walls.size, I plus plus, just like that. If walls.getI dot x is less than negative 800, walls.remove I. And we have, we forgot a semicolon. There we go. So what this is going to do is it's going to check and see if the wall, we got to stop our program. If the wall is really far gone this way, so like our player's right here, if the wall is all the way over here, it's gone, it's in the back, we don't want to see it anymore, so then we get rid of it. So if we keep going here, you can see we have 14, now we have 28 walls. I know the console's super small for you guys, so you actually probably can't see that, so I'm glad I was reading it earlier. Now we have 32 walls, but we shouldn't get any more than 32. Yeah, it's sticking at 32, because it's deleting the old ones as it makes the new ones. Now if we go back, you can see that we're only going to go back to here, and that's it. But we don't want our player to be able to go back that far anyways, so that's not a problem. Eventually we're going to implement that they can't move back. The screen won't move backwards. The ideal camera motion thing for me would be the player can actually move their real X and Y position until they get, excuse me, until they get to like right here. Then it moves the camera, and then on the way back, the camera will never move back, but they can move up to the edge. That would be kind of the perfect system for me. But yeah, so that's why we don't need to worry about going back too far off screen. But we don't want to say like if X is less than 10 or negative 10 or something like that, because you know you can move back a tiny bit and then there's a gap there and it's just weird. But ideally our player would never actually see that there's nothing in the back here. But it just clears it on the back end, so we don't have to run that much, because then every time we check our collisions, we're checking every single wall, and it's going to become a really big issue when we have, you know, tens of thousands of walls. That's going to take a lot of time. So that's that. I think the next thing we're going to implement is the random generating terrain, and I'm not going to show too much of this because this takes a long time to make, but I'm going to show you guys how to do it, and you can do your own, or you can copy my code pretty much within our game panel here. When we go back down to the make walls method, we have our random generator here, and right now it's only giving us one option. We're going to bump this up to 2, so now we're going to have 2 options, and we're going to say else if index equals 1, and then we're going to create a different kind of code. So again, I have my image editor right here. This is GIMP. This is, you know, the free version of Photoshop essentially. And within here, I've kind of created like blueprints for all the different stages we can create. So this is the next one right here. With it kind of has like a pyramid, you could say. You know, there's a gap to jump across here. There's a different gap to jump across here. And these are just random ones that I came up with my kind of lack of creativity. You can do whatever you want though. Or you could keep it all the same if you wanted. Although keeping it the same would make a really boring game, actually. I wouldn't do that. But yeah, you can do whatever you want with these. But pretty much all you're going to want to do is you want to add a wall for every single pixel that you have on here. So if I want to create a wall right here, then I'm going to, within my method, right over here, within the if index equals blank, we're going to create the wall. So we're going to say walls.add new wall offset plus, and then we're going to put whatever we want for the X position, the Y position, and then SS. So the X position would be however many pixels it is away from here. times 50. So this one would be, this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 times 50 is 3,500. No, 350. 350. So that would be the X position. And then the Y position, remember we go from the upper left corner right here. So we want 0, 50, 100, 150, 200, 250, 300, 350, 400, 450. No, we're actually, the height is not right on here. This doesn't go from the actual top. 600 is the bottom one right here though. This was just for, again, kind of like planning purposes. So I was going 600, 550, 500, 450. I know that's super confusing, but if we want a pixel right there, again, that's 450 and 350. So what we would do is we go offset plus 350. And then for the Y, we'd say 450. And then we'd say SS, just like that. And we need another parenthesis, I think. Oh no, we don't need a parenthesis there. Need one here. There we go. So now there's a 1 in 2 chance that that's the one that we're going to create. As you can see right there, we have just one pixel right there. So that's the code that we just created. And you can do that to make any kind of wall configuration you want. I'm going to copy paste a bunch of mine in because I don't want to take the time to actually recode all of those again. And if you want to just use mine, I'll put them in the description down below. So far, I've made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I made 7 of them so far. So I'm going to copy all of these over. If we copy right here, I'm actually going to keep our flat terrain one. So I'm going to paste right there. Import for color. I was adding colors as well. I'll show you guys that in just a moment. This is going to create a ton of errors. This is going to be else if, and I'm going to space them all out by 1 because I actually want to keep our just normal flat terrain there. So I'm copy pasting in all of my code. This will be in the description down below. Right here, x equals to 4, and x equals to 5. Index equals to 6, index equals to 7. There we go. So now we have 8 of them set up. So what we need to do for a random loop is we need to set this to 9. Because remember, this will give you, no. Wait, no, our highest one is 7. Because we're starting at 0, so we have 8 of them set up. We want to keep this on 8, because then this will give us between 0 and 7. One other thing I did, though, is I'm also passing through a color to set the wall. So this is actually quite simple. All we need to do is, within our wall, we need to establish a color right here. Now, the problem is that... No, actually, that's not a problem at all. Yeah, so anyways, when we establish our wall, we're going to create a color variable just in the class outside of the constructor. Color, just like that, capital C, lowercase c. And then within the constructor, we're taking in a color, just like that. And then we're going to say this dot color equals color. So now whatever color is passed into it will become the color variable for this particular instance. And then when we draw it right here, instead of setting color to white, we're going to set color to color. It's actually not difficult at all. I thought it was more difficult than that. So that's all we need to do. That should fix all of these errors except for this one up here. This one we're just going to do... What color should we make these walls? We already have white. Let's do a weird color. I believe one I haven't done yet is color dot... Pink? I don't know if I did pink. No, I think I did. Are these all the colors? All the colors we have? We'll do pink. Let's do pink. Color dot pink. Just like that. We actually don't need parentheses there. There we go. So that should have fixed all of our errors. So now we're going to run our code. It's going to be colorful. And we should have some randomly generated terrain here. Just like this. As we move along, our terrain is different. I actually cannot jump high enough here. I changed the jumping on my other game. So really quick, I'm going to get rid of that print line that we had within our run method here because we don't need that anymore. Let's get rid of that. And then we're going to change the jumping to make it a little bit higher. Let me see exactly what I had in the other game. So I had it down to a pretty good number. I changed the jump to 11. So when we jump here, we're going to say y speed is equal to -11. And that's going to give us that power from jumping. And then I changed gravity to 5 because otherwise 3 was a little too low and it was jumping a little bit too high. So every time we update for gravity, we're going to say y speed plus equal to 0.5 instead of 0.3. So this is our new jumping. It's a little bit higher. I like this better. It depends whatever you want, that you can change that to whatever you like. But now you can see we have randomly generated terrain. It's different colors, so it's really clear to see that it's a different terrain right here. And we can move along just like this. So I want to go a little bit more. I think I'm almost done. But I want to add a few more things before we end this video. This one probably won't be as long as the first one. The first one was over an hour long. YouTube wouldn't let me upload it for a bit because of like new account stuff like that. I had to verify my account a couple times. But now we can move along here and we're generating random terrain. And if we fall off, we're going to start back right there. Just like that. And also every time we start, we're going to have a new starting one here. You can set it if you want. Like, it's easy to hard code it just to start on one terrain. You can just pass make walls with a specific index. Or, you know, create a separate make walls method just using that one terrain generation. I would probably do that eventually. So it always starts on like this one on a flat ground and then it gets into the random generation. But yeah, so that works pretty well. I do want to add a restart button, which is super simple. All we need to do is within our panel, within our key listener method, we have key pressed right down here. We're going to add one extra one that all it's going to do is if e.getKeyChar is equal to r, that's a 4. Then we're going to say reset. Super easy. Now you can press R to reset. I wonder why it's not fixing our Y position there. I'm not sure why it wasn't fixing our Y position. That was interesting. Let's see if it'll do that again. I wonder why that is. I think maybe there's a collision going on at that point. I'm not sure. That's a bug. I'd have to look at it later. Because within our reset method, we should be setting Y to back up here. Is it while it's colliding? No, it's once we're on the ground. Weird. Within our reset method, I actually want to set the Y a little bit higher. I want to set the Y to 0 so we start all the way at the top of the screen and fall down. I just like the way that looks. So I'm actually going to do Y equals 0. That should not fix this though. It's interesting. I wonder why it does that. I don't know. If we're in the air, we're fine. But it looks like if we're moving or if we're like colliding with something. The only thing I can think of is maybe the collision method is somehow messing with our X position or with our Y position. Because the collision method is occurring while we're hitting restart. So maybe that wouldn't be too hard to fix later. You just have to have like a different variable to check and see if it's currently colliding with something. But let's not worry about that right now. That's just a little bug. But anyways, you have a reset button right there. And then if we fall off the map, we reset. I do want to add actual physical buttons up in the corner, just so we can use later, but we may as well create them right now, and I'll show you guys how I do this. So when I figured out this trick, it made everything super easy. We're actually going to use the rectangle method again. I love the built-in rectangle methods. They're way better than the swing buttons are horrible, like J buttons and J field, text fields and stuff like that. I don't like using them at all. I don't like the way they work. They're just awkward and weird. So instead, we're going to create two rectangle objects. We're going to say rectangle restart rect and rectangle home rect. We're going to create two buttons, a restart button and a home button. We don't actually have a home menu right now, so we're not going to attach any code to that one yet, but we'll do that a little bit later. We're going to import rectangle right there. And then let me see what we actually set those to, because I remember just the X position and Y position were a little weird. We want to set, we're going to do this at the very beginning when we create our panel before we do anything else. We're going to say reset rect, restart rect. It's equal to new rectangle. And we're going to say 550, 25, 50, 50. So that's going to put it, remember it's 0, 0 is right up here, I'm doing this backwards. Here, this is 0, 0. So we're going to go over 550, and then we're going to go down 25, and then it's going to make our rectangle 50 by 50, just like that. It's going to be up in the corner here. That was a horrible demonstration. You guys get the point. And then home rect is going to be equal to new rectangle. Right next to it, we're going to go 625, 25, 50, 50. So remember, this one will be 50 pixels wide. This is going to make a 25 pixel gap because 550 plus 75 equals 625 right there. So there's actually not too much more into it. well, besides adding a mouse listener. But that's all we need right now. And then within our draw method, we need to draw both of those. So let's get to our draw method down here. So below our panel, yeah, that's gonna take a while to scroll through there. Within our draw method, we have super.paint, we have graphics 2D, player.draw, draw all the walls, and then we're gonna draw our buttons right here. I'm actually gonna copy paste this code in. I'll just explain it super fast. You guys can always pause the video if you'd like. Copy it in. This is just a lot of code that's kind of not really necessary to type. I'm just setting the color to black, and then I'm drawing it at this, drawing 2 black rectangles at the same location where we just created them. Remember, draw does not fill it in, so this is for the border, just to make it look nice. Just right here, 550, 25, 50, 50, and then 625, 25, 50, 50. It's the same thing we just created for the rectangles. Then I'm going to set the color to white and actually fill them in. We want to add 1 here so that way we're not drawing over the border we just made. And then we're going to subtract 2 for the widths of these because number 1, 2, 1, 2. It's the same thing from when we created the walls in the last video. This is the exact same code. Then we're going to set the color to black, and we want to just fill in like an R and an H for right now. Eventually I can make graphics with like a little arrow for a restart button, like a home thing for a home button. But we're going to set the font real quick to button font, which is something we need to create. So let me do that super fast. I'm gonna do this up here out of the constructor in just the class. Up here we're gonna say font button font equals new font. And within font we're gonna say Arial for the font right there. I just like using Arial, it's simple. I don't know if all the fonts are included on here, so Arial works well. Font.bold, this is a different type. You can do bold, you can do italic, you can do underline. No, not underline. There's a bunch of other options here. I don't know what most of these even do. I usually either use font.bold or font.plain are the only ones I ever use. But we're gonna do font.bold for this one because it's a button. If it was just like a normal text, I'd say font.plain. We'll do bold though. And then 30 for the size is what we're gonna do. So now if we go back down to our draw method, down at the bottom here, we're just gonna draw an R and an H over the buttons so we actually know what they're for. So this should work now. If we run our code, right here we have 2 buttons. We haven't actually attached anything to the buttons yet, so right now they're not gonna do anything. But they look pretty nice. I like just the positioning right there and stuff like that. So what we're gonna do is we need to add a mouse listener. This is actually the one thing that's kind of annoying, but mouse listeners are useful, and maybe we'll use this for part of our game in the future. So we definitely want to have this here in case we need it. Right now we have a key checker. We're going to add a mouse listener in the same way. The way we're going to do that is we're going to create a new object, or a new class, excuse me. By hitting the white folder right there, we're going to create a new Java class, and we're going to call it mouse checker right here. Mouse checker already exists. Does this exist? Oh, I'm in the wrong, because I clicked in the other tab last. Let's click here. Try this again. It shouldn't exist within this program. Yeah, there we go. Mouse checker. There's a new object right here. Let me make this bigger so you guys can actually see that. And as always, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add the extends, or implements, excuse me, not extends, within the class. So we're going to say implements mouse listener, just like that. I believe we did extends when it was the panels. Let's see. Sorry, I'm jumping all over the place here. Yeah, we did extends for the panels. For the mouse listener and the key listener, we do, this was also extends. Interesting. Implements works too, though. I wonder, can we do extends? We need the import for mouse listener. That's just the import right here. NetBeans should do that for you guys. I wonder if extends would work. No, yeah. So for mouse listener, you need to use implements. I couldn't tell you why. This just works. Don't worry about it too much. So you're going to say implements mouse listener. It's going to say we need the abstract methods. So we're going to implement all abstract methods is the little dialog I'm clicking right here. I know you guys probably can't see that because it's super tiny. I can't make it any bigger though. So implement all abstract methods, just like that. And it's going to add mouse clicked, mouse pressed, mouse released, mouse entered, mouse exited. Those are pretty straightforward, I think, but clicked is just a normal click. Pressed is the action of pressing it down. And then release is when you release it. Entered is when you enter the screen with your cursor, and then exit is when you exit the screen. So if you want to like make it when you exit the screen it pauses or something like that, you could do that if you'd like. I've never actually used those though. So what we're gonna do, let me zoom out super fast just so I can do this a little bit easier. We're gonna get rid of all these unsupported operations. Even if, like, I'm not gonna use mouse exited, but if I don't get rid of it, then whenever I exit with the mouse, it's going to crash it because it's going to say unsupported. So we need to get rid of all of these, get rid of all these throws, and just leave it blank. And don't worry about it if you're not going to use them. Just like that, and then I'm gonna make it a little bit larger again. And all we're gonna use is right here, when we create this object, we need to pass the panel into it, just like we did for everything else. So we're gonna say game panel. This is the same that we did for the key checker. We passed in the panel right here. Game panel. And then when we, in the constructor, do we have a constructor? Oh, we don't even have a constructor. Public mouse checker. Game panel. This dot panel equals panel. Just like that. There we go. And then the only method we're even going to use is mouse clicked. That's the only one I'm worried about. And we're going to say panel dot mouse clicked. We're going to pass ME, which is just the mouse event. We're going to pass that through there. And it's going to say panel mouse clicked. Oh, excuse me. It's going to say mouse click does not exist within the panel, so we need to create that. We'll just let it create it for us. That's all I clicked. It was just the first option. The only option was to create that method within our game panel. So now if we scroll to the bottom of our panel here, we have the mouse clicked method, which again has a throw that we do not want. So we're going to get rid of the throws clause right there. And we're going to add some code here in just a moment. But first we need to actually create our mouse checker object. Let's not forget about that. So if we go back to our frame, remember how we added our key listener right here? We're going to do the same thing with the mouse listener. So we're going to say add mouse listener, new mouse checker, and then we're going to pass through panel because we need to pass the panel into it. Just like that. And we're getting an error. It still thinks that mouse checker doesn't want arguments. I believe the same thing happened with our key checker. I don't know why Java does this. As soon as we run it, that error will be resolved, though. Don't worry about that. It thinks that in mouse checker we don't want any arguments, but we said right here in the constructor that we do, so it just hasn't figured that out yet for some reason. I don't know why that happens. So finally within game panel, we're gonna add some code into our mouse clicked event. I think first, let's just add a system.println click, just so we can make sure that everything's working. Let's run this, and where's our output? I don't know where our output went. That's odd. I have too many windows open here. Somehow our output disappeared, so that's not going to work. So never mind. Let's not do that. I need to be able to stop the code actually though. So let's cancel our program there. I do not know where our output went. It just disappeared. Is it on the bottom here? It's probably right in front of me. You guys are probably laughing. Is it? I think it's stuck on the bottom of the screen here. Well, we're not using console anyways. But all we're going to say is within the mouse clicked method, right at the bottom here, we only need one line of code. We're going to say if restart rect dot contains, and then we want a point. So normally I would just do me.getPoint, which will return the point of where a mouse is within that mouse event. But the problem is that the mouse clicker in Java Swing does not work super well, and it actually goes from like the bottom of the let me show you really fast. It'll go from like where the bottom of the arrow is. I know it's hard for you guys to see, but it'll click like right here it would work. Right here it would not work. I don't know why. It drives me insane, but it is what it is. So let's stop that really fast. And what we're actually going to do is we're going to create a new point, and then we're going to give it the x value of me.getPoint.x, or .getX. No, can you do .x? There you go. .x, that's all we need. Comma, me.getPoint.y minus 27. 27 is just what works. Don't worry about that too much. And then after that, we're going to reset. So now we have our reset button right here, and if we press it, it should work. Why is this not working? Give me just a second to figure this out. I'll be right back. Okay, guys, there were two very clear problems with our code there. I had me.getPoint.x as a method, so I had parentheses there, and I forgot to import for point. It should work if we run it now, though. Right there. Yep. So now it's working. So we press the restart button, and we're still getting errors with our collision happening while we're restarting. But besides that, it looks good. So I think that's going to be it for this video. We have working terrain generation, restarting, and respawning. So in following videos, we might add some graphics. We might fix the camera a little bit more so you can move in the middle of the screen. But anyways, I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you found it helpful at all, be sure to drop a like and subscribe. Comment what you want to see in future videos, and check out the tutorial for, check out the playlist for the whole tutorial series. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.